Good morning and welcome to Saturday AM Live with Dr. Josie. Um, for anybody who doesn't know who I am, I'm a holistic integrative veterinarian. I've had a integrative house call practice for 25 years in South Florida, and I am bringing the education that I bring to my house call one-on-one patients to you guys on Substack. I've always run my practice with the foundation of educating my clients, the pet parents, pet owners, the caretakers of these animals, so that you guys can do a better job taking care of the animals that live with you. They give us so much love and caring and compassion, and they truly do get us through some of the tougher times in our lives. So I just want to honor our four-footed friends, mainly dogs and cats, but this also goes for birds, for reptiles, for horses, for goats, for chickens, for all of the whole animal kingdom. So today I'm going to cover a good morning, Kimberly. I see Becky on there. Hi. Hello, you guys. So today I'm going to cover a somewhat controversial topic, maybe in holistic medicine. We're going to talk about the rabies vaccine, and the rabies vaccine in particular, because I want you to understand why rabies is such a highly regulated vaccine and why it is a public health risk. This came up and kind of superseded any other topics I have because last week, the county I live in, Broward County, was issued a rabies advisory warning. And it's literally in my backyard. They found a rabid raccoon south of 595 out in Davie. And so they kind of cordoned off this whole area of where that outbreak of rabies may be occurring. And I literally just drove over there this morning to pick up my mail from the UPS store, and it was in that area that on the map. So I'm going to put links of everything I talk about in Substack. So you can actually go to the link on the internet. You can see the map if you happen to live in Broward County or have friends in Broward County. Now, this is not an uncommon thing here. Actually, when I first moved down here 26 years ago, Broward County had multiple rabies warnings of finding rabies, particularly in the raccoon population. It's so first off, what is rabies? Rabies is a virus that is trophic. It goes into the nervous system. So ends up it lives in the brain of mammals and mammals only. Okay. And when it it follows the nerves of the brain down into the salivary glands, and while it's in the brain, it forms these things called negre bodies. These little when they take slices of the brain, they look at them under the microscope with this. I don't know if they do a special dye or if it just shows up as these little black bodies, these little black dots. And that's the rabies virus. So it travels down the nerves into the salivary glands. So when the animal or person who has rabies, it gets in their salivary glands and they go to bite another animal or person, it travels through the saliva across the skin barrier into the person or animal that's bitten. Once it gets into the person or animal that's bitten, it travels up the nerves. Like if they bite your hand, it travels up the nerves and back into the brain. Now, once it's in the brain, of course, we know if a virus gets in there and it's actually dislodging parts of the brain and affecting it, it actually affects them behaviorally. So it makes them look like they're neurological. So they may be what we call be ataxic. They will be wobbling around like drunk, often in the middle of the day. So if you see wildlife out there wobbling around in the middle of the day, it can, and then in the later stages, it actually makes them aggressive and it makes them unable to swallow. So it's almost like this virus hijacks the body, reproduces in the brain, comes down in the salivary glands, and then it's like it makes the animal not able to swallow its saliva, so there's even extra saliva there to be able to spread to its next host. It's evolved quite miraculously if you look at it from the virus's point of view. So you see those pictures of like old Yeller and the dog's rabid and they're ferocious and they're going around because they're literally out of their minds. It affects them neurologically, so they don't know what they're doing. It affects them cognitively, so they are out of their minds and they're foaming at the mouth with all the saliva. Now the animal doesn't necessarily even have to bite you. If you have a open cut on your hand, if you have a break in your skin barrier, and it gets in there somehow, if it splashes, I don't know if it gets in the eyes, but you don't wanna get it in your body, any of their saliva or, drool. It can pass the virus to you. Now, once you get the virus, there is no cure for rabies. Yeah, I'm gonna have the replay up, Julie. There is no cure for rabies. So once it's in you, that's it. Now, what they do is say you get bitten on the hand, and if you run into the hospital right away, they will put rabies antitoxin and inject it. Like, say you were bit on the hand, they will inject it up higher on the arm to block that spread up through the nerves, hopefully, so that it doesn't come all the way up to your head and get in your brain. Um, now, and it's deadly. There have been, let me see. Okay, so I'm going to go over some statistics for you so you understand. There's been approximately 4,000 animal rabies cases reported annually in the United States. So over the whole entire United States. So it's not that much, but there's four major rabies reservoirs, which are raccoons, 32.9%. And these are reservoirs, these are animals that get that virus and just keep it kind of perpetuating. Bats, 29.6%, skunks, 19.5%, and fox, 7.7%. Other wildlife that can transmit rabies are, and they see it a lot, are bobcats, coyotes, javelinas, which I'm not sure, I think they might be down in South America, otters, deer, weasels, and mongoose. Rodents and lagomorphs make up only 0.9%, and that includes squirrels. And the reason they think that it's not rabies is very, very rarely spread from a squirrel is because most of the time the squirrels don't live long enough, and squirrels and rodents like rats are also prey species. So they're usually eaten and killed potentially before they have a chance to bite the predator. Now, I mean, if you did have a rat or rodent, squirrel bite your dog as your dog was getting it around the neck, sorry to be so graphic, but it's nature. Um, and they turned around and bit him and had rabies, that's a high risk. There's also domestic animals. So they say domestic animals, including cats, cattle, dog, horses and donkeys, sheep and goats, ferrets and llamas comprised 8.2% of reported animal rabies cases in 2019. So it's really interesting. A lot of the rabies when I was in vet school were coming in from cattle or horses that are out on pasture, and they're out there grazing, and like a rabid skunk or something will be there and like get all freaked out and go after and attack their nose and bite their nose. So if we had a cow or horse come in that had been on pasture that was like overly salivating, it was always treated as a rabies risk. Bats are actually the leading cause of human deaths of rabies in the United States, and I think that's because they get into houses, they sneak into small places. There was a little kid, I think he was about 2 years old, up near Orlando. It was just a few years ago, and his dad was out in the garage working on the car, and they found this bat flopping around on the ground. Number 1, big red flag. A wildlife species animal is out in the middle of the daytime flopping around on the ground. Don't go near it. Don't touch it. They took it. His dad put it in this bucket, set it aside in the garage. The little kid's wandering around in there. He sees this thing down in the bottom of the bucket. He reaches his arm down in there and bam, he gets bit. And he was so little, he ended up dying. They couldn't get the antitoxin in time and he ended up dying. So it is a risk, you guys. Javelina residents in the southeastern United States. Oh, look like pigs. Okay. So they carry in our host for rabies. Less so than raccoons and skunks. Um, so let me just see. Squirrels. So if you see an unusual wildlife species out in broad daylight, acting very strangely. Sometimes they'll charge at you. Sometimes they'll be like they're just going to be out of it, or sometimes they can be really aggressive. Stay away from them. Keep your dogs away from them. All right. And again, it's regulated because there is no known cure for it. Now, to be a responsible pet owner, and I know there's this big thing about rabies vaccine. I don't advocate vaccinating for rabies every year. In most counties, in a lot of counties around the country, it's a county by county basis. The counties, a lot of them have approved the 3-year rabies vaccine. Okay, so by law, that's what you're looking at, is giving it every 3 years. Now, there are some states that do have health waivers. So you can get the vaccine waivered due to a health concern. And I would consider a health concern any type of immune mediated issue, whether that's allergies, whether that's cancer, whether that's an autoimmune condition, any kind of neurological issue. And as the homeopaths say, rabies has a miasm to go to the nervous system. So seizures, any type of neurological issues, and I would get a waiver so that you don't have to vaccinate your dog. But I want all of you to know how to protect your animal, whether it's vaccinated or whether it's not vaccinated. Okay, so there's a couple different instances where this is very, very crucial. If you have a dog that has never been vaccinated for rabies, or you never have proof of vaccinated for rabies, or is overdue for rabies, and that your dog happens to bite somebody. And these days in this litigious society, they may break the skin, they may not break the skin. That the people could be nasty enough and have the potential enough to possibly force you to euthanize the dog, because the only absolute way to test to see if your dog has rabies or not is to euthanize them, to go into their brain, slice up their brain, and look for those little negro bodies. I had to do this as a veterinarian when I worked out in New Mexico because the coyotes out there had a lot of rabies. We had a lot of very aggressive dog species out there we worked with, and they were constantly biting people. So if animal control got, this Rottweiler that's out on road such and such bit this person, they would go out there, pick up the dog. They can't find the owner of the dog, especially they'd bring it into us. And we had to literally send the dog's head into the state lab to be tested for rabies. So you don't want that to happen. You don't even want it to be an option. So everybody, and this, you talk to a lot of vets, everybody will take their dog in. Oh, my dog never bites. Listen, if your dog has teeth under the certain right circumstances, your dog will bite. So if it is not current on rabies, if you do not have proof of rabies, you have to be responsible enough to not put your dog into a situation where it's going to bite somebody and they could turn around and force you to have it tested for rabies because that would mean the death of your dog. So that's number one. Number two is you want to make sure that they're protected, but you don't want them to have side effects from rabies. Now, there was a study done called the Rabies Challenge Fund. I'm going to put up Dogs Naturally magazine has a really, really thorough article that goes into everything behind that study. I read it last night, and it's more thorough than gave me information that I was not even aware of. So what they did, Dr. Jean Dodds and Dr. Ronald Schultz, who happened to be my immunology professor in veterinary school, took a group of beagles, totally isolated them. They'd never had any other vaccines. They gave them a rabies vaccine, held them under isolation, and then actually exposed them to the live rabies virus via sub-Q injection, not via bite wound. But they got a heavy load of rabies in them, and then they waited to see if the vaccine that they had given them offered them protection from developing the disease. So it is like the gold standard test. Now there were some problems with the way the test was run. They found out that the initial dose of rabies virus that they gave was not a virulent rabies virus. It was kind of dead. So they had to throw away those results. There were some problems in there, and you can read all about it in this long article. But if you are choosing not to vaccinate your dogs for rabies and you really want to know how this stuff works, I really, really encourage you to read the article, and I will put a link for it down below. So I'm just going to go over a couple of the conclusions from this Rabies Challenge Fund. They found out that the rabies vaccine may induce a duration of immunity well beyond 3 years in dogs. Okay, may. They had some cases where it didn't, and it may have been the way the study was designed, and again, the rabies virus. They found out that the antibody is the most important protective factor against rabies virus. Um, Amnestic responses to virulent challenge, which means memory cell responses to the challenge, can be seen even without protective titers in previously vaccinated dogs. So that means if your dog was vaccinated, they do a rabies antibody test, and the antibody test comes down low. There are memory cells to rabies that are in the bone marrow. So that virus comes into the body, those memory cells kick out, start making antibody. So that's the amnestic response. So there are memory cells, those will start kicking out and provide protection. Protection persists without annual or triennial revaccination. So it goes beyond, it's not like you give the vaccine and then if the vaccine is a year vaccine, at a date of a year that the vaccine just expires and stops working and alarm bells go off in the body and say, oh, no more rabies vaccine. That happens with the 1 year and 3 year vaccine. Buddy, please sit down. Antibody testing of individual pets can be an excellent indicator of protection or lack thereof, although further studies are needed to determine a protective antibody threshold for vaccinated dogs. Now, this was one of the failings of the test, is they were not able to establish an absolute cutoff for the vaccine titer. Now, the other thing I want to say about vaccine titers is you can get it for your own peace of mind to see if your dog does have antibody levels to rabies or not. A vaccine titer is not going to hold up in a court of law. It is not going to hold up in a veterinary clinic because most people do not honor them because we do not have this threshold cutoff level. So don't think, well, I have my piece of paper and it says this. It is not established well enough for the law to accept the titers. You just have to know that, you guys, whether, we can kick and scream and have a fit, but until the laws get changed or until these threshold levels are established, we just don't have them. All right. The study did show that fully vaccinated dogs who've had their first 2 initial rabies vaccines should have solid protection for far longer than 3 years. We just don't know how long. And so, for your own peace of mind, if you choose to not vaccinate your dog for rabies, you might want to get the titers done again. Then you at least know there's antibody levels. So if they tangle with local wildlife, I would still get them into the clinic and everything else. There's a Okay, their recommendations about this study included, there was a revaccination trial that showed that even if your dog's rabies vaccine has expired, a booster should restore his protection. So that means if you've had your dog's rabies vaccine, they're recommending getting a rabies vaccine. In this study, they did 8 weeks and 15 weeks. I would do, usually here it's like 3 months and then another one at a year. As long as they've had those 2, but then say you don't get another one after that. If you get another one 2 or 3 years down the road, you only should have to get a single vaccine and not do the 2 boosters in order for protection to be reestablished in the body. A few years ago, Kansas State University found the same thing in a rabies titer study they did. And I'll try to look that up and include that link as well. So and I have not looked up the current compendium of animal rabies prevention and control, but in the 2016 compendium of animal rabies prevention and control, the guidelines say that if a dog exposed to rabies is overdue for his rabies vaccination, he can have a booster shot followed by an observation period at home instead of being euthanized or quarantined. Now, this information is really important information for you to have. So if something happens as an emergency, and especially the way these clinics are going on now, you guys, you have to walk in there informed, and you need like the document in your hand so you can show them. So, I'm going to look up the current compendium of animal rabies prevention and control. They do revise that every few years, and I'm certain there's probably a new revision out. And I'm going to put that link up there. It might even behoove you to print out on paper copies these to put in your folder. So when you have to run off to the emergency clinic after your dog tangles with a raccoon, you've got the stuff in hand. Or if your dog bites somebody. Okay, any kind of bite wound, either inflicted by your dog or your dog being bitten by something else. I would have these things on hand. So then you have some evidence to show them. And again, I'm all for paper copies. This stuff, the internet is scrubbed daily of information. And if it's not on there, sometimes it's really hard to find. Okay, so my recommendations for rabies, because I'm literally sitting with rabid raccoons, and we have a park. I'm kind of in a little like walled off community, and we have a city park with a lake in the middle of it. They just redid it. We did have a whole entire pack of coyotes living in my backyard, essentially. And the coyotes have moved on, but like I had a giant hawk out there. I've got rats living in my backyard under the mango tree. So we have lots of wildlife around here. And the dogs, I always go out with them at night, but you don't want your dogs tangling with wildlife. So if you know this is going on, like I will probably go out there or put a leash, but he does not have good recall. He will not be going outside without a long lead on that I can pull him away from something, period. So my recommendations are: first, don't feed wildlife. That is a huge problem. Now, a lot of the feeding of wildlife happens secondarily to people feeding feral cat colonies because raccoons love cat food, and people put out all of this cat food for the stray cats. They don't pick it up. The raccoons come in and feed with the cats. The raccoons tangle with the cats over the food, possibly biting them. And boom, you have a feral cat colony now infected with rabies. And if you don't think this could happen, this did happen here in Florida a few years ago. It never made the news because it happened actually close to a zoo facility. We do not have any rabies vaccines that are licensed for exotic animals. So exotic animals cannot be protected from rabies. So this put all of those exotic animals at risk. So they had to go in and trap and euthanize the entire feral cat colony because they could not risk it having rabies. They found it in a kitten that somebody brought into a vet clinic. So if you're going to feed feral cats, I understand the feral cat issue. I was a big trap, neuter, release proponent a while ago, but you need to go in there and clean up that food and not leave it out because you are putting that whole colony at risk if you have raccoons and you have rabies in your area. Don't feed wildlife around your house either, so that you have raccoons coming up on your porch like, "Oh, look how cute they are," until you let your little fluffy white dog out to chase them, okay? Not a good idea, and you're not protecting your dog by doing that. There are coyotes now in every single major city in the United States. Coyotes carry rabies. So that's another reason to be really cautious. Um, don't allow your dogs out unattended. You've got to keep an eye on them, even in the daytime, because the daytime are going to be when the neurologically damaged wildlife are going to possibly, a raccoon fall out of a tree in your backyard and you're inside getting a cup of coffee while your dog's going out there to go to the bathroom. You have to be responsible and keep an eye on them. Okay, it's just vital, and have them on a leash. Now, I have a story to tell you, and this is how important this stuff is. I had a client, she may even be listening today. Okay, if you have no record of previous vaccine, Barbara has then you need a booster at 12 months of the first one. If you don't have a record of previous vaccine, they are saying to get 2 boosters. Now, what you could do is get the 1 booster and then get a rabies titer done, and if the titer comes back high, then I would say you're probably good to go and be safe. So you could either do 1 booster followed by another booster. Like down here, the law is the first rabies at 3 months of age, and then the next one at a year of age. So there's a 9-month difference there, between the 2. So you could do another booster. You could do another booster and then get your rabies titers done. No, not 2 boosters at the same time. A booster means you give 1 shot and then you wait for a period of time and then you go back and give a second shot. But in your case with your dog, Barbara, because I know him, I'm sure the rescue gave him a booster. I can't imagine them fostering a dog without having proof of rabies. So I would check with them. And if they gave him a booster, what I would do if you're concerned is, you're down there on South Beach. They haven't had any on South Beach. But if you take him off the beach somewhere, if you come up here to a park in Broward, I would definitely be concerned about him. Yeah, they gave him a vaccine, then he should be good. I wouldn't worry about it. Okay, so this is a story I have to tell. A client of mine, she had 2 little rat terriers. These were like 3-4 pound dogs. And she lived down in an area of Miami that was like high rises on Brickell by the water, by the bay. But there are a lot of raccoons down there. So she was out one night after dark. It was like 7, 8 o'clock after she'd gotten home from work. She was walking the dogs and she was walking along the sidewalk and there was a dumpster and there was this big fat raccoon inside the dumpster. Well, he spotted them. He was like up on the edge of it. He spotted her and the dogs. He jumped down off of that dumpster and he charged at her and her dogs. The dogs, of course, little rat terriers are pretty, they'll go for other animals. So they started fighting with the raccoon. She's grabbing both of her 2 little dogs, kicking at the raccoon to get him to go away. And so he finally took off. and took off and ran up a tree. So here she was, she'd gotten bit in the calf of her leg because she was kicking off the raccoon. Both of her dogs had been bitten. I think she may have been bitten on the arm too. I can't remember. So her neighbor took the dogs to the emergency veterinary clinic. They both were up to date on rabies, thank goodness. And then she had to go to the hospital. And because the raccoon took off and they didn't have the raccoon, so they couldn't test the raccoon for rabies, she had to go through the set of rabies shots just in case. And this was at a period of time when, again, they had found a couple of a couple raccoons that had rabies down here. So, and it made her really sick. And she's not a person to get vaccines. But if you're sitting there going, man, here's this raccoon that charged us. Now, the reason he actually charged her is she had a neighbor in her like condo facility they had these little backyards, and her neighbor was a painter. And so she wanted to entice the raccoons to come up into her patio area so she could sit inside with her easel and paint the cute little raccoons that were eating cat food on her patio. So they had gotten used to being around animals, used to be humans, used to being fed by humans, and he was like in his dumpster getting his food, and he was chasing off the potential competitors for his food. Now, still to this day, we don't know whether he had rabies or not. So a situation can happen like that in the blink of an eye. So you have to be careful. Number one, know what wildlife live in your area. Number two, don't get complacent about, oh, this is never going to happen to me, because it definitely could happen. And it's not anything to, mess around with. It really isn't. Okay, I don't want you to be freaked out about rabies, and I don't want you to run out and get your dog a rabies vaccine, because that's not the point. If you're concerned, you can always get a rabies vaccine titer. It takes a while to get them. They aren't cheap because they're run out of Kansas State University, and they are always backlogged. Okay, but be aware. The best thing to do is be aware and don't mess around with wildlife. Okay. And then you won't have to worry about it. Even if that means walking your dog on a leash. It's not going to kill your dog to be on a leash, and it's not going to kill you or your dog to be a little bit cautious. It can kill them if you're not cautious. So there's my take on rabies. The next thing that I was going to talk about in terms of vaccines is a topic that I've really been kind of sticking my head in the sand over because of everything we've been going through. And it's kind of like, I just want to do this. I just want to be like, you got to be kidding me. But Dr. Judy Morgan came out with a video about it, and I looked up their marketing material, and it's happening. And it's something that everybody needs to be aware of. And that is these Novavax NXT RNA vaccines. The USDA just approved last year for the United States a canine flu vaccine and a feline leukemia vaccine. The brand is Novavax. It is their NXT vaccines. Now, Novavax also makes like a 3-year rabies and some other vaccines, the PureVax, that are not RNA vaccines. Okay. These are their next NXT RNA vaccines. Now, what's interesting about these is, where do I start? They only have the feline leukemia and the canine influenza vaccine licensed in the US so far. Those two vaccines, I don't even recommend giving under any circumstances, actually. So I would just say, if you have a dog, don't get him flu vaccine. If you have a cat, don't get him feline leukemia. But we have to watch out, because now they do have a next RNA rabies 3-year vaccine. It is not licensed in the United States. The only place it is currently licensed, and you can make your own assessments on this is Canada and the state of California. So what these vaccines are is they are RNA self-replicating vaccines. So they're not exactly the same as the mRNA vaccines that they used for COVID, but they are self-replicating RNA vaccines, which means as that the RNA they're using gets into it actually gets into these dendritic cells, which are a very specific type of cell involved with the immune system, a white cell. They infect those cells and then they start replicating not the antibody, not the antigen, but the RNA itself self replicates and makes copies of itself like a Xerox machine. And then each one of those RNA pieces can go off and infect another cell. Once they get into the cell, then they make copies of the actual antigen virus, which then stimulates the immune system to have a protective immune response. Now, just like our friendly mRNA vaccines with COVID, these have not been thoroughly tested for safety. Okay, so I'm going to tell you how they're marketing them so that these drug companies, they're not stupid. Their marketers are actually extraordinarily smart and tricky. So when I go online and I look at vaccines, people are like, well, just give a half a dose of the rabies, then it's not going to be so bad, which that's a false premise. And I could go into a whole entire immunology class on that, but giving a half dose really isn't going to make that much of a difference in giving a full dose. Okay. So these people, Novavax, one of their first things on their marketing pamphlet is, you can use a smaller dose of the vaccine, so it's going to be easier on the body. A low volume, quote, a low volume half mil dose for a more gentle vaccine experience. So they're playing off of these. They literally went online and gathered this stuff up. I know this is a good selling point for people who are scared, vaccine hesitant. The next thing they say is there's no extraneous material. Novavax next level protection is in a preservative free, adjuvant free, thimerosal free formulation. Again, point number 3. It's targeted and efficient. It delivers the desired viral sequence to dendritic cells for an enhanced, precise immune response. Safety and efficacy without compromise. Self-amplification triggers a robust antibody and cellular immune response without the use of an adjuvant or live organisms. It delivers the RNA sequence of a pathogen's specific gene of interest in a targeted way to the dendritic cells. The gene of interest is unpackaged and for a limited time makes multiple copies of itself. The copies of the gene of interest are translated into large amounts of antigen, which stimulate a broad and balanced immune response. Okay, so the problem with this is they say that for a limited time, there is no place I can find in any of their scientific literature or papers or anything else what that limited time period is. Does this genetic material, this self-replicating RNA, get in there and just continue to self-replicate over and over and over again? This was the same question that many of us asked regarding the mRNA COVID injections. And Pfizer and Moderna and all the companies could not give a clear-cut answer to it, and I still don't think they can. So Novavax is not giving a clear-cut answer to this. So it could get in there and just make antigen forever. So the immune system just gets overwhelmed by all this antigen production. When you overwhelm an immune response, an immune system, that's when you end up with autoimmune conditions leading right into cancers. Now we're already seeing the turbo cancers come up. So there's a whole bunch of questions unanswered with this stuff. Okay, there's a whole paragraph of sciencey stuff, which I'm not going to read to you. So one of this John Ellis, DVM, he's a professor of veterinary microbiology at Western College of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Saskatchewan. He was interviewed for an AHA article on this, which I will post. He stated the smaller dose should correlate with a lower risk of reactions. The absence of an adjuvant also should reduce the risk of adverse effects, he added. But I don't think we know until it gets out into a large population of dogs. Right there, he's actually saying and admitting that we're not going to know what kind of adverse effects are going to come from these vaccines until it's tested out on our dogs. So they're not doing testing before they release it. They don't have to. There's no laws, there's no USDA stating that they have to do that type of testing. Now, they did do a little bit of testing, and I'm going to tell you, wow. Okay, so for the feline, this is a feline leukemia vaccine RNA particle. This is their efficacy testing. So they looked at cats 8 weeks of age were given the first vaccine. There were 18 cats vaccinated and 13 in the control group unvaccinated. 18 cats. They challenged the cats with feline leukemia virus at 421 days, 424, 426, 428 after the second vaccine. And they were observed daily. Blood samples collected at weekly intervals from 3 to 12 weeks post-challenge, and they found them protective. So they carried it out at 12 weeks after the second one to see if it actually worked and provided protection against feline leukemia virus. Now that's the efficacy study too. I'm trying to look. The safety study on cats to demonstrate safety in cats under field conditions. 2 doses were administered 3 weeks apart. They had 837 cats, so a fair number of cats, almost 1,000, in 4 different areas. Cats were observed daily for any adverse events from the first vaccination through 14 days post-booster vaccination. So these are short-term studies of vaccine side effects. 14 days. They followed the cats 2 weeks after their last booster, and that was it. We have no long-term studies. We have no idea if this stuff is going to continue pumping out antigen and create really severe long-term immune system problems. 6 months down the road, a year down the road, 2 years down the road. We have no idea. They don't have to do the long-term safety studies. Okay. The other thing is they did no safety studies. We have no idea how long this thing is going to keep working. And the other thing with this self-replicating RNA, we do not know if it will shed, if these animals are going to be shedding this RNA, this man-made genetic material in their saliva, in their sweat from their paws, in any bodily secretions to the humans in the household they live with. Okay? I mean, it's actually a really horrific thought to think that you could be cuddled up on your couch on a Friday night with your dog and cat beside you, and that they're shedding man-made genetic material that could potentially be giving you cancer in the long run and giving them cancer in the long run. It's not good. And the reason I say cancer is that with the mRNA vaccines, they've already found, and a new study came out this week actually, where they have verified that the man-made genetic mRNA material is actually integrating into the nuclear DNA of the person vaccinated. Now, this is serious, serious, serious. I can't even tell you how serious this is. This is at the level of when they split the atom to make the atom bomb. Serious. in terms of the destruction of life, because they made a gene in a lab, injected it in the body, and now that gene is integrated into the DNA blueprint of the nuclear DNA of the person. That can be passed on into future generations. They changed the cellular DNA blueprint of humanity by releasing this stuff. Now they're releasing it to dogs and cats and having them be potential vectors to pass it on to people. It's it there needs this is why I have said all along, and people in the field have said, people that understand genetics at all have said there needs to be a moratorium placed on this type of research and on releasing this genetic material into the population. Because you guys, once it's released, you can never take it back. It's too late. So the safety study on this is on dogs. On dogs, it was the same thing. They had 654 dogs given 2 doses 3 to 4 weeks apart, and they followed them for 2 weeks after the last vaccination, after the last booster. So we have absolutely no long-term safety or efficacy data on this at all. It's really messed up. There was another study that let me see if I can find it quick if I look here. Um, that search. Another study that came out on Substack. I'll post it, and you guys can read it. It was a study that Dr. Judy Morgan referenced in her latest video. So when it is more important than ever when you go to a veterinarian, if they want to give your dog or cat a vaccine, any type of vaccine, that you know that what the company's name is and what the name of the vaccine is. If it's Novivac NXT, don't get it. Um, so if anybody has any questions, you can put any questions up there. I think I asked. I'll go back through. It's hard for me to follow questions on here, but I think I got Barbara's question about the rabies. Things are still changing rapidly again, and there's probably going to be more and more of this type of stuff coming down the pike, for humans and for animals. It's just like the genetically engineered monoclonal antibodies. Anything with a man-made gene in it, just stay away from for right now. They're using the global population as a petri dish on this stuff. And, it's pretty darn scary, actually. So, again, they're saying they wanna spray crops with it, they wanna inject cows with it, so it's even more important to know where your food is coming from, know how your food is raised, know if the farmers are ethically what they're spraying their crops with, what they're feeding the animals with. You may end up spending some more money on your food, but I would rather and on your dog and cat food, but I would far rather spend a whole ton of money on food than go to an oncologist and be spending tens of thousands of dollars. Even the integrative oncology treatments right now for dogs, I saw some estimates on it, and it's beyond the scope that most people can pay. So if you want to stay as healthy as possible, you want to reduce your cancer risk and your dog's cancer risk, stay away from these things. Any man-made gene, whatever it is, it's just too dangerous to be messing around with. And on that note, we are in an eclipse right now. There's going to be a big eclipse tomorrow. If you don't think that has an effect on our world, just pop open your news station. And there was an eclipse September 7th. So everything that's happened between September 7th and now, is because the sun and the moon and the earth are lining up and some big changes are taking place. So I would recommend laying low this weekend. Stay away from big collective gatherings of people. Uh, it's not a time to really even be outside. It's really interesting. The Ayurvedic and the Hindus in India, they take eclipses very seriously to this day. And people stay inside. They often don't even. They'll fast during that time because any food that is hit by the energy coming into these eclipses, they don't want to take into their bodies. So I don't quite go that far, but I don't do a lot of spiritual practice. I may just do some silent meditation. There's enough going on in my dream world and in the world around that I don't need to call in anything. I don't need to try to manipulate anything. I don't even need to ask for anything right now. I just want to sit in calm equanimity and silence, and ground down into Mother Earth because that's where we're at. We're on the earth. She is holding us up. She's giving us a home and a place to live right now in our bodies connected to the earth. And so I think that's the best thing that you can do this weekend. Tomorrow's the eclipse on Sunday. Monday is equinox. So it's the equal days and nights. So that's another big alignment happening right on this eclipse. It has not, what was it? There's some other alignments with the big outer planets that literally have not occurred since 4000 BC. There are people that looked back at the placement of the planets, and it's like a once in 4,000 years alignment. So again, take it easy, lay low. I think we all have enough to deal with in our lives right now without creating more drama or more problems, and just wait it out. It's like being in the spin cycle of the washing machine. Let it spin around and do its thing, and then we'll see where the cards fall next week, the week after. Take care. Um, be aware of rabies. Be aware of your surroundings when you're out with your dog. Pick up all the cat food you may have set out there so you're not drawing them in, and be safe. And give your animals a big love for me, big hug for me. And if you have any questions, I'm going to put the posts up in my Substack so you can put the links up that I talked about so you can read about it. And then if you have any questions there, oh, Barbara, cool. So you may have a potential adopter. That's good. That's good. She has a big American bulldog that's a lot to handle and needs some people who can really handle it. That's really good news. Great. Thank you so much, everybody. Take good care, and we'll see you next week. I also have the owner of Equisol, a red light therapy company, coming on in a couple weeks to talk with me there about red light therapy as well. So, and I got a really special book too that I want to share on here with you guys, and I'll do some readings out of that, which I think is pretty fascinating. Take care. Bye bye.